Good morning, friends. My name's Steve, and welcome to another Field Trip Friday.
And I'm Tanika. Good morning, everyone.
Absolutely. We're so excited to have you here today. What are we doing today, Tanika?
So today we are visiting the Triangle Land Conservancy's Horton Grove Nature Preserve and the neighboring Historic Stagville State Historic Site. Woo, that's a mouthful right there,
I
but
know,
we're
right?
really excited. So today we have Daquan, Kayla, and Vera with us. Daquan is the Education and Outreach Manager. Kayla works as a Community and Outreach and Education Associate. And Vera is with us from Stagville. Thank you all so much for being with us. And every Friday, we also have the opportunity to host a different DPS classroom. And so today we have Y.E. Smith again with Miss Whitford's class. Good morning. We're so excited to have you.
Good morning, Y.E. Smith. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us. We're very
Absolutely. We're really excited to share this trip with you. It was so beautiful the day we were out, and I can't wait for you to see it. We had so much fun with Daquan, Kayla, Vera, and all the rest of the folks that were out with us that day. You'll get to see them in the video. And I want to remind you, students that are here with us, Miss Whitford's class, you can chat us questions during the video, and we'll either get to them in the chat or we'll call out those questions and answer them at the end with our live Q&A. So stay curious and ask questions while we're watching, and I'm gonna go ahead and share this trip with y'all. Let's get going. Hey everyone, welcome to another Field Trip Friday. My name's Steve.
And I'm Tanika.
Where are we today, Tanika?
So today we are at the Horton Grove Nature Preserve, which is one of the 8 preserves owned by Triangle Land Conservancy and the only public preserve here in Durham County.
This is so cool. It is beautiful. I can't wait to learn more. Let's meet some folks.
I am so excited. So let's go.
Let's do it. So Daquan, can you tell us who you are and what you do here and where we even are?
Yeah, sure. I'm Daquan Edmonds. I'm the Education and Outreach Manager with the Triangle Land Conservancy. And we're at one of our 8 public nature preserves, which is Horton Grove Nature Preserve, and it's in Durham County.
Awesome. And so what is this? It seems like it's a huge space. I think you said it's over 700 acres or something, right?
Yeah, it's 700 acres of protected land, and the land we're standing on right now used to be a part of the Cameron plantation, which was one of the largest slave plantations in the state of North Carolina, and you know, obviously that comes with a lot of extra history that we have to be sure to take care and learn about, and you know, we'll talk about that a little later on in today's episode.
Excellent. That's awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us how you got into being with the Triangle Land Conservancy and what even makes you want to preserve a trail like that. Makes sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Exactly. Yeah, I've been with TLC since, we call it TLC for short. Been with TLC since December, and I guess my background is more in parks and recreation, and I began, you know, wanting to learn more about how parks become parks and how, you know, people can learn to enjoy them. So then my interest started shifting more towards conservation and protecting land for generations to come. So that's how I ended up here.
So Matt, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Matt Rutledge. I'm the Associate Director of Stewardship at Triangle Land Conservancy, and work a lot on our properties that we've conserved, like Horton Grove. And we do things like build trails that allow people out here to access it. We do restoration projects for wildlife. We also, this is our That Makes Sense trail, so we have signage up to kind of give folks an idea and give them some information about the species that you might find out here and things like that. You know, this property is one that really embodies a lot of our 4 public benefits, which we talk about. We protect land to safeguard clean water, so we all have clean drinking water. For local farms and food, so we all have access to local food. Natural habitat, and then this is a restoration site, so that's part of that. And then to connect people with nature, and that's where the trails come in, so everybody can get out and experience what we have out here.
Absolutely. It seems like there's so much to learn. I saw your bluebird signs, and then you were telling me about all these blackberries and the kind of like habitat that this supports. And so there's whole ecosystems to observe in this area, and that's just a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, and Horton Grove actually has a number of different ecosystems. One reason I like it so much, you have a mature hardwood forest that you can walk through. Our trails go through that. This is one of our grassland restorations. So this type of habitat historically would have been much more common. But as people have moved in, as Europeans have moved in, the sort of natural fire regime, some of which was natural causes like lightning, but also the native peoples burned a good bit and created this type of open habitat. Lots of natural grasses out here, native grasses, and it benefits a different type of species than what you find in mature forests. So there are a lot of birds that need this open habitat. They can hunt for insects, things like that. Lots of pollinators and grasshoppers and things out here which attract those birds as predators. And so a lot of species are in decline that need this type of habitat. And so that's one thing we're trying to do is restore an area where some of these species in decline can be, and then teach people about it as they come and walk through it.
So Vera, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Vera. I am the manager for the historic site where we're standing right now, Stagville State Historic Site. Stagville is right next door to the Horton Grove Nature Preserve that y'all are visiting during this trip. So the Nature Preserve and our historic site preserve related land and land that has very similar connected history. And our historic site is right here next door to the preserve. My job here is a public historian, which means that my job is not just to research and learn about the history of the people and the buildings that were here, but also to teach that history and to share these stories with as many people as possible.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So if you were to give us a little bit of a synopsis of some of the kind of realities that made this place what it is, what would you say? How would you share that?
So our site protects a tiny fragment of what used to be one of the largest plantations anywhere in the state of North Carolina, and really probably one of the larger plantations in the United States. So when we stand on this land today, we're standing on one of the largest sites of slavery in all of North Carolina, and today a place that is probably one of the better documented sites of slavery in our area. By 1860, the plantation around us here sprawled across about 50 square miles of land, including where we are now, but also all of the land of the Nature Preserve and many miles around us here. And by 1865, we believe that there were over 1,000 people who were held captive in bondage on this site. So our work today focuses on researching and teaching about the experience of the dozens of families who were forced to endure slavery here. And we focus on learning about their family lives, their cultures, their traditions, as well as the labor they were forced to do and the policies and decision making of the white families who owned and controlled this plantation. Where we are right now, in particular, is on the grounds of Horton Grove. This is the site for which the Nature Preserve next door is named. And Horton Grove is the only surviving set of slave dwellings from these massive plantations. So these buildings behind us here in this row are the only surviving houses where we know that families lived here during slavery, which makes these buildings probably the most important buildings that we protect in our site, and really a remarkable place for us to visit today to be closer to understanding the history of what families experienced here.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
So Kayla, can you tell us who you are and what we're doing here?
I'm Kayla. I am the Community Outreach and Education Associate for TLC. I am actually an AmeriCorps member, which means that TLC is my host site, and I'm doing my service term for a year here, which it's been a wonderful year thus far. And I'm really excited to be out here with you all today.
Awesome. Yeah, it's beautiful. It is just an incredible spot right here.
Oh yes, this is one of my favorite spots. I know that Daquan earlier spoke about how Horton Grove is his favorite preserve, but I've been here a little bit longer, and I have to take claim that it's my favorite preserve, so we can't share.
It's quickly growing to be my favorite preserve too.
Yes. But here in front of us, we actually have a really cool creek bed here. It's actually been recently studied by a couple scientists through the North Carolina Environmental Agency, and they have actually found a stonefly that they believe to be, which it's not confirmed yet, but believed to be a species that's only found in the Ozark Mountains, which is in Arkansas, Oklahoma area, which if it truly was this species, then that would expand its range by about 800 miles, which is insane. So they want to do a really cool study on this creek, and it's called a benthic study, which means that they're doing a base level or lower level water layer study to see what kind of macroinvertebrates, so like large insects in the water, are, so that they can see whether or not this is actually a model system that could be a model for undisturbed creeks all over North Carolina. So, which means that it would be really clean and really awesome, doesn't have any pollution or nasty chemicals in it. So
right, that idea is kind of like trying to see what a creek would look like if it weren't being impacted by human beings or other industrial processes or something. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So what would you like to show us about this space? I think you mentioned some macroinvertebrates, some cool insects that live in the water.
Yeah, we're actually going to do a quick little demonstration to see if we can find anything cool in the water. Daquan and I have brought some nets and buckets, so we're going to actually show you the best way to look under rocks and to cause as little disturbance as you possibly can when you are doing these kind of studies. And let's go ahead and get started.
Let's do it.
All right. So today we're going to actually be looking for indicator species, which indicator species are organisms, so plants, animals, insects, fungus, anything that's living, that will show us how healthy a system is. So their presence, so whether or not they're here, will tell us whether or not these waters are polluted. The best way to look for indicator species is to have a net of some sort. It doesn't have to be a fancy net. And you put it down right in front of a rock that you're going to turn, and you're going to pick the rock up so that the flow of water is going into the net. So anything that's underneath the rock is going to swim its way into your net, and then you've caught it really easily. So all you do is you swoop underneath when you roll the rock, turn it up, and put the rock back where you found it, because you don't want to disturb the creek in any way. And then you can look in your net and see if you found anything.
Yeah, another good way to look for indicator species or any invertebrates are to kind of they like to hide places, right? So you see there's some leaf buildup and some sticks and other things. So you can just take your net and sort of wrestle around in there and then pull it out. Let's see. Oh, cool. I got one.
So we found some really cool indicator species while we were fishing around with our nets. So these are macroinvertebrates, so that means they're tiny little insects, but we can see them, so that means they're large enough for us to see. But a couple of the ones that we found some crayfish, and we even found a dragonfly nymph, which is really cool. Those two show that there might be some pollution, but it can show that there isn't any pollution at all. If we kept looking, we might be able to even find a stonefly larva, which that's the one that I was talking about before. They have found that in this creek. So stonefly larva really can't have any pollution in the water that they're sitting in. So that shows that this is really clean water. Now, when I say clean water, that does not mean that we can go drink this water. That just means that there's not any pollution that's like fertilizers or chemicals that humans have put into the water. But we still, as humans, need to filter it even further so that we are safe to drink it.
So yeah, we've seen some cool stuff today, haven't we?
We have seen some cool stuff. I loved hearing from Vera all the historical background of Stagville.
And I think Matt earlier, talked about our 4 public benefits of conservation, but I think this property in particular really illuminates, some of them. So we saw the clean water, right? We protect clean water, clean drinking water, and who knows where that stream flows into. It could, one day affect our drinking supply. We've seen cultural sites that are not just protecting the land, but protecting the stories of the people, and that connection to nature piece that's in our mission. And Matt also talked about the restoration efforts that we're doing to protect natural habitats here. So I think it's been just such a great trip. We're glad you all were able to join us. And there are definitely ways that you can get involved with conservation at your home. One way is to just come out and celebrate and support the trails. We have 44 miles of hiking trails at Triangle Land Conservancy preserves. So get out and interact with them. Do you have any other ways?
Yeah, definitely. We have volunteer groups with all the schools that we can interact with, and they'll come out and we can do cleanups, we can do trail maintenance, things like that, where it's even just something like a simple hour where everybody can pitch in and have as many hands in the dirt helping us all out. We have a pretty decently sized staff, but we can't do everything with the 20,000 plus acres that we do preserve, so we definitely need everybody's help. We also have a great program called Triangle Explorers. That is something that you can do at home completely, or you can do it in your community. It doesn't have to be in your backyard, but all of the activities that are on the Triangle Explorers, you complete an activity, you earn a badge, and it's all free, but it's a great way to connect with nature in your backyard, on our preserves, or in your communities.
Yeah, I think it's just cool to see the different ways that conservation can look, and see all of the different benefits that it can have for the public. So
yeah.
Thank you so much, Daquan, for showing us around the Horton Grove Nature Preserve. We really feel like we learned a lot today.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm really glad you liked it.
It's been incredible. This is such an amazing resource that y'all are providing for our community. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And anyone who's tuning in, feel free to come out yourselves and experience the preserve.
Absolutely. Is there anywhere people can get more information?
Yeah, you can go to triangleland.org to look at all the work we do, maps of our nature preserves, and more information about volunteering and our Triangle Explorers program.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we're going to get to talk to you in just a minute in the live Q&A.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for the live Q&A where we'll get to ask Daquan, and probably Kayla too, some really cool questions.
Yeah, bring it on. Bring it on. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. See
you,
you
friends.
then.
Thank you, friends. That was so fun. We had such a good time that day. Oh, it was so beautiful. It was like, oh, just perfect. I hope you all get a chance to get out there. But what I'm super excited for is how many awesome questions and observations and ideas came up in the chat. Miss Whitford, would you like to call out some of your students' amazing curiosities?
Absolutely. We had a lot of really good questions during the field trip. So what the kids are most excited about were all of the animals. So what types of animals are there in this trail?
Yeah, throughout the preserve, there are tons of animals. We saw a few during the field trip. We saw, the crayfish and the dragonfly nymph that was in the stream. But I think towards the end of the field trip, you actually heard a hawk, screaming and calling. So that sound you heard was a hawk. We have, raccoons and squirrels and lots of, when we were there in front of that pond, we also saw lots of different tadpoles, and a frog actually jumped into the water and caught us by surprise and made us all jump also. So there's, just tons of animals all throughout the area. And I think that's one of the great benefits of having land that is protected, because it gives the animals a place to live.
Yeah, I recall towards the end of our indicator species investigation, we actually ended up finding a salamander. We weren't able to kind of capture it. It was very smart. It was like evading, and we like Kayla mentioned, our objective was to observe them more than disturb them, right? So we didn't try very hard, because salamanders are very sensitive. So we, after our initial attempt, the salamander moved off and we let it be. But it was still really, really cool to see that. Salamanders are pretty sensitive, like Kayla mentioned, to pollutants, and so being able to see a salamander in the creek, happily doing its salamandering was really wonderful. And I remember, I think we saw a turtle in the pond too. Yeah, it was a really rich day, and I just loved that hawk just kept calling, like, while you were doing your kind of outro. It was so perfect. I was just like, oh, keep calling there, buddy. It was cool.
Our next question was, do you have to care for the animals in any way?
Great question.
Yes, so they are, wild animals out there at the preserve. So they take care of themselves, and, through some of the, smaller animals might be prey for the bigger animals, and just sort of following the food chain. So it's, we want to make sure we're minimizing the impacts we have on the animals. A lot of times, they would not like eating human food. I'm sure they would love eating it, but it's not, good for them, and would actually cause more harm than good. So.
Yeah, and I would like to also jump in and say that it's also just, even though we looked at the water system mostly, the entire ecosystem out there is pretty healthy as far as a lot of locations go, because we've done a lot of work to reintroduce native plant species, which means that they are really good for a lot of the animals that are out there. There sadly are some invasive plant species where we want to pull those out that don't necessarily support those same animals. So they don't provide food or shelter or any of those necessities that animals need. And we've done a lot of work to be able to make sure that those kind of habitats are sustainable and out there for those animals. So you can find a lot of diversity and a lot of different species out there.
Yeah, I loved talking with Matt, because it seemed like that was a lot of what he is particularly passionate about, is the kind of restoration and kind of support of those ecosystem dynamics. That was cool.
That kind of leads into the next question. What impacts do humans have on that ecosystem?
Great question.
Yeah, Kayla, do you want to go first?
I was just going to mention the obvious ones. So we do obviously have impact, especially with the trail system and everything like that. That is an impact on the ecosystem out there. But we do want to minimize our impacts with like the trails. So we want to stay on trail at any time. We don't want to go hiking through the middle of the grove, especially because that's a very, it could definitely have a large impact on that system. But we do sometimes have trash. People will leave trash on the side of the road and things like that. So that's a huge impact as well, because littering can be pollution and can hurt the animals and the plants out there. So we don't want to do that. But we do have volunteering cleanup days where everyone, any age, can participate in them. So definitely have ways.
I think it's, to echo what Kayla said, I think it's really important whenever you visit
any sort of nature preserve or park to try to just make sure your impact is as minimal as possible. So doing things that don't disturb the plants or the animals that live in the area.
And kind of like piggybacking off of that, like when we were there, they literally had to pull a grill like out of the water. So when we're thinking about human impact, like something as small as littering can have a bigger impact on this ecosystem. And I think people really fail to realize how much humans really impact everything that we are constantly around, because I mean, weren't plants here first, so really we're disturbing them anyway. So like, you know, we really need to be cognizant of some of the things we kind of just toss out the window or off the back of the trucks or whatever. And I think that was a really big deal.
Yeah, and it's easy, I think, to ignore the interconnectedness of these spaces. Though Kayla and Daquan and organizations like TLC and all of their volunteer groups that come and help to protect that space, all of that work, you know, does protect that space, but ultimately that space is still connected to the rest of the world, you know, and so the impacts that we inflict on the rest of the world will ultimately trickle down, if not directly impact these protected spaces as well. So though it's really essential to protect, you know, special places, it's also important to protect the everyday spaces that we use and inhabit on a daily basis. There were some other really cool questions. Ms. Whitford, would you like to call out some more? These are great.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the students just asked, what made you so interested to the point where you wanted to work on preserving 2,000 acres of land?
Great question.
Yeah, I think from, you know, just spending time outside and, you know, also seeing the different impacts that humans have in other places. Like, you know, maybe we're tearing down trees to build a neighborhood for people to live. That's sort of disturbing the animals that live in that area. So I think having land set aside to protect the natural habitats and natural spaces for animals. But then, you know, it's also protecting the streams that we sometimes end up drinking, and setting aside land for people to have farms on is also another big one. So yeah, just seeing how everything is sort of connected, and realizing we need areas to be conserved and protected.
I think along those lines, one of the other connecting pieces of this episode was the need to protect and preserve our history and a connection to that. And I remember we didn't get to feature it in this video, but I remember talking to Vera a little bit about her interest and what led her to kind of working as an interpreter in the historic sites system. And I was wondering, Vera, would you like to share a little bit of what led you on your journey of kind of interacting, engaging, and sharing in the history of specifically this space, but also just history in general?
Sure, I can say a little bit. I grew up right here in Durham and really grew up in Durham not knowing about the history of Stagville and not knowing that there were so many families who had been through slavery at Stagville, who had a connection to this land and this place and the history of this plantation. And those families were part of the neighborhoods I grew up in and part of the city that I grew up in. Those are the families that helped really start to found and build up the city of Durham, the place we live today. And I am so sorry that I grew up in Durham, like I think so many folks, not knowing that history and not recognizing how important it is to recognize those foundations and to recognize these people that helped build the place that we live today. And so one of the things that I really appreciate about teaching history today at Stagville and in Durham is getting to teach a history that's really connected to the city that we live in today, and is part of the history of so many different neighborhoods and businesses and churches in Durham.
Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate it, Vera. Yeah, just as we were discussing earlier, the desire to connect with the land and its physical beauty and its ecosystem services and all of the things that it does and the support that it provides for non-human animals and plants and all the other organisms and species that live in that space. It's also really important to maintain those resources to support our own stories and our human history and our human communities. So yeah, thank you for sharing that piece.
And I think that's definitely one of my favorite parts, because I also have that connection to Durham. So it feels like, just having these opportunities to connect with everything that's already here really makes, me kind of sad that we didn't have this kind of opportunity when we were growing up. There was no Steve with virtual field trips, So it's really nice for us to have a chance to really connect with the area that we're constantly in. Ms. Whitford, we have time for probably one more question, if you have one that you would like to ask.
Absolutely. So are the trails always open all the year around? And if we are able to come in person, what kinds of activities do you offer?
Yeah, so the trails at Horton Grove are open all year round, from dawn until dusk. So you can, head out when the sun is out, and even if it's rainy, the trails will be open. And if you come for a field trip, we love to work with teachers and their students in their class to kind of customize the activities that we offer. And yeah, we can definitely make it a great time if the world allows for us to do so soon.
Yeah, it is really awesome. And I hope everybody has a chance to get out there. It is so beautiful. It's a really wonderful space. There are so many other amazing questions, and students, I really appreciate your curiosity. I want you to know that those questions are still important. And in fact, I believe that questions are far more important than answers, because they're what drive us in our journeys as scientific thinkers, as human beings. Curiosity is so much more important than what we find at the end of those journeys. And so keep those questions in your mind, keep searching for those answers. I apologize that we didn't have enough time today to get to all of your amazing questions, and they were amazing. Thank you for your curiosity. I'm going to let Tanika take away some more thanks, because we are so thankful. This is such an awesome experience. Thank you.
So we want to take the time to really thank Daquan and Kayla and everyone at TLC, as well as Vera and everyone at the State Historic Sites for really walking us around and talking with us during this field trip. We really felt like a connection to all the sites that we visited. Of course, we would like to thank everybody over at DPS for partnering with us. And that's when we come to the best school ever, White Smith. Thank you, guys. Tell my aunt hey when you see her in the hallway. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to give a special thanks to Tanika. She will be graduating with her Master's of School Administration from North Carolina State University this weekend. So congratulations, Tanika. Really nice work. I can't wait for your future in school administration. It's already been awesome working with you in your work with Neal Middle School. And thank you so much, and congratulations. I'd also like to give you a preview for what we're doing. This was our 30th episode. So we've been on quite a journey this year. And next week, we're going to take a look back and see some of that journey. We're going to look back at some of our favorite moments and just reflect on the journey of places and people and ideas and questions that y'all have brought to this experience. And we're going to think about, what do we do with all of that? And so we're inviting a whole host of classes to come. So we're going to have a bunch of different classrooms with us to shout out some of the awesome experiences they've had. And we'll show you an awesome video recapping some of the awesome places and people that we've seen along the way. I can't wait to see you there. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. We'll see you next week on another Field Trip Friday. Thanks, y'all.